Hey seniors, today we're going to move on from scientific notation and start talking about something new. Yes! Alright, so on your notes page I want you to go ahead and draw a line on the left side of it and go ahead and write perfect squares. So let's talk about what a perfect square is. A perfect square is the product of two equal integers, and product should tell you that we're dealing with multiplication here. But let's think back to elementary school math and talk about what a square is as an object. I know that a square is an equilateral object that has dimensions that are always the same on all sides. So I know that if I'm given one of my dimensions is 4, that each one of the other sides is also going to be 4. If I wanted to find the area of this shape, I know, super easy, length times width. 4 times 4, 16. So that's going to give me my area. So if I wanted to figure out what the square root of 16 was, I would think to myself, what multiplied it by itself will give me 16? My pen is your pen. Make sure you have this down. So I know that 4 times 4 equals 16, or 4 squared equals 16. So if I want to find a square root, that's my first step. I think to myself, what number multiplied by itself will give me the number in the radical sign? And this crazy sign, this crazy radical sign, just means square root. All right, let's go on and do some examples. Actually, no, let's do one more. All right, I want to know what the square root of 81 is. So I'm thinking to myself, what number multiplied by itself gives me 81? So I think back to my multiplication tables, and I know that 9 times 9 equals 81. So 9 squared will give me 81. So the square root of 81 is always 9. Let's go on. All right, it's going to be super helpful for you guys to have a list of the common perfect squares. And again, a perfect square is a product of two equal integers multiplied by itself. So 1 times 1 is always 1, so the square root of 1 will always be 1. 2 times 2 is always 4, so the square root of 4 is always 2. I want you to go ahead and write down all of these perfect squares, 1 through 12. Don't worry about these last 5, because these will be super helpful for you throughout your math career in general, but definitely in today's lesson. It's also going to be helpful for you to have this list handy for today's lesson, tomorrow's lesson, and probably the rest of the week until you have this completely memorized, because it will help you to refer back once we get to more complicated problems. So take this time, pause the video, and copy down 1 through 12. All right. Sometimes, and most often, I'm going to be given a number where I have to estimate what the square root is. So, today we're going to find two integers that the square root falls between. The square root of 10, this is not a perfect square. I don't know what this number is. So my first step is to figure out what perfect squares are around this number. And I know that 9 is a perfect square, and that 16 is a perfect square. And I'm looking for two integers that the square root falls between. And I know that the square root of 9 is 3, because 3 times 3 equals 9, or 3 squared. My pen is your pen. And I know that the square root of 16 is 4. So the square root of 10, whatever this number is going to fall between 3 and 4. Every single time. So I've just solved my problem. I found the two integers that the square root falls between. Let's do another one. Nope. There we go. All right. Whoops, not that. If I want to know what the square root of 41, what two numbers that this number falls between, again, I think to myself, what perfect squares are around it? And of course I know that 36 is a perfect square, and that 49 is a perfect square. The square root of 36 is 6. And the square root of 49 is 7. And again, until you guys have these memorized, I would use your handy list of perfect squares that you copied from the previous slide to help you with this problem. So my two integers that the square root of 41 falls between is 6 and 7. Let's put this on a number line. Say zeros here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The square root of 41 is going to fall somewhere between 6 and 7. My pen is your pen. All right, the last one we're going to do, the square root of 94. Again, I go through the same process. What are the perfect squares that are around this number? Well, I know that 81 is a perfect square and that 100 is a perfect square. The square root of 81 is 9, my pen is your pen, and that the square root of 100 is 10. So I know that the square root of 94, whatever this number is going to fall between 9 and 10. All right, that's all we're going to do for today. We're going to move into our guided and independent practice. And again, I would highly recommend that you keep that list of perfect squares out handy so you can refer back to it. And always think whenever you're given crazy numbers that aren't perfect squares, what perfect squares are around it? All right, I'm done talking. It's time for you to practice.